The significance of him passing on the Easter Monday, how does that strike you?
High significance. I always say this, we can't choreograph the way we go.
Who were here the last time, 12 years ago. So this will be your second conclave. What do you have to do to help people get familiarity with each other and their thinking? Give us a little walk through what next week will look like.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan has always played the loyal supporter. But was it all just for show? Behind the smiles with Pope Francis, there may have been quite tension building for years.
All the way down to Paul and John Paul I, John Paul II, Benedict, and Francis. And we will have a successor to Francis. And so we entrust ourselves to the Lord Jesus, who's going to provide in that area.
Now, just as he approaches retirement, Dolan's starting to drop hints. Subtle digs at the Pope's choices on things like same-sex unions, reforms, and foreign policy. Why now? Is something bigger happening behind Vatican walls? What's really going on?
St. Patrick's. So you're onto something, Kurt. It's personal for Catholics, but everybody seems to. I've already gotten, dozens and dozens of texts and phone calls of sympathy.
Cardinal Timothy Dolan and Pope Francis might smile for the cameras and say all the right things, but behind the scenes, their relationship hasn't always been smooth sailing. It all started back in 2013 when Dolan was part of the group that chose Pope Francis during the secret vote to elect the next pope. At first, Dolan seemed completely charmed. He laughed at Francis' jokes and praised his humble style. He even told reporters about the new pope cracking, "May God forgive you," after being elected, something that made people laugh. But if you think about it, was that just a joke? Or a warning of what was coming? Fast forward a couple of years to 2015, and Dolan was front and center during Pope Francis' visit to the US. He acted like a proud parent, calling himself the father of the bride while guiding Francis around New York. It all looked warm and friendly on the outside, but if you listened closely, you'd start to hear murmurs. Some church insiders weren't buying the act. Was Dolan really on board with everything Francis stood for? Or was he just keeping up appearances? Dolan has always had a tricky job. He leads one of the biggest Catholic communities in the US, where many people hold more traditional views. Meanwhile, Francis has pushed for changes and open discussions that don't always sit well with conservative Catholics. That's left Dolan walking a tightrope, trying to please the Pope while not upsetting the folks in the pews. It's like trying to clap for both teams at the same time, and honestly, it's raised some serious questions about where Dolan truly stands. And then came a moment that made people stop and look closer. In 2014, there was a huge church meeting called a Synod, where bishops from around the world gathered to talk about major family issues, including divorce and same-sex relationships. Pope Francis wanted an open and honest discussion, but Dolan and some other cardinals weren't too happy with how things were being handled. They sent a private letter to the Pope saying they had serious concerns about the direction things were going. That's a bold step. Dolan, who's usually seen as the friendly face of the church, had just signed onto a message questioning the Pope's big plan. Now, Dolan later tried to downplay it. He said he still supported the Pope and wasn't trying to stir the pot, but let's be honest, if everything was fine, why send that letter at all? Was he trying to keep conservative Catholics from rebelling? Was he trying to slow down the changes without directly challenging the Pope, or was it something deeper? Was Dolan starting to drift away from Francis's leadership style? Here's where things start to get really interesting. It's 2025, and Cardinal Timothy Dolan, now 75, and at the traditional age where bishops are expected to offer their resignations, is finally talking. After over a decade of smiling for the cameras, standing by Pope Francis and repeating all the right things, Dolan seems to be peeling back the curtain. And what's behind it? Let's just say it's not all hugs and harmony. It turns out the always smiling, always praising Cardinal has had more doubts and frustrations than anyone guessed. Let's start with something that shook the church to its core: the McCarrick scandal. Publicly, Dolan played the loyal leader, telling Catholics to trust the Pope while the Vatican slowly investigated. But behind the scenes, he wasn't so calm. People close to him now say he was seriously bothered, borderline angry. about how long it took the Vatican to act. This wasn't some petty issue, it was a deep stain on the church's reputation. Victims were hurting, people were leaving the church, and Dolan was left holding the bag. He wanted quicker justice, clearer answers, and transparency. So why didn't he speak up back then? Some say he didn't want to break ranks, others think he was just waiting for the day he could finally say what he really felt, like now. In 2020, Pope Francis caused a stir by saying same-sex couples should be allowed civil unions. It was a big shift in tone, if not in church teaching. But while progressive voices cheered, Dolan didn't exactly jump for joy. He stayed quiet publicly, yes, but privately, he was deeply unsettled. He believed this kind of comment would make people think church doctrine had changed, even if technically it hadn't. To a lot of traditional Catholics, it sounded like the Pope was going too far.
Don't do.
Facciamo in silenzio.
Before giving his blessing, he asked for theirs, for ours, and bowed in silence.
Dolan, someone who always tried to bridge Vatican teaching with American Catholic values, felt stuck. Was he supposed to defend something he wasn't fully behind, or was he supposed to call out the Pope and risk dividing the church even more? Here's a topic most church leaders avoid: terrorism. Dolan didn't. Sources now say he was frustrated that Pope Francis didn't push moderate Muslim leaders hard enough to speak out against violent extremism. Dolan thought the Pope had a global platform and should have used it more forcefully. Not to generalize Islam, Dolan's always been careful there, but to call out silence in the face of groups like ISIS and Boko Haram. But again, he never brought this up in public. Why not? Was he afraid of being labeled insensitive, or did he know the Vatican didn't want a fight over religion? Either way, he didn't speak until now. And now that he has, it raises a tough question. Was the Vatican playing it too safe while people were dying? And then there is the Synod. This gathering of bishops to talk about issues like divorce and same-sex relationships made headlines back in the 2010s. What didn't make headlines? Dolan's behind-the-scenes concerns. He thought some of the language used in those discussions, like welcoming remarried couples back into communion, could be misunderstood as weakening church teaching. But again, he didn't go public with it. He worked behind closed doors to steer things in a more traditional direction. Now that he's opening up about it, it makes you wonder, why now? Was he protecting his position all those years, or did he really believe in unity over honesty?
The day that the angels, we remember the angels announcing the resurrection. And remember what the angels said to the women: why are you looking for the living among the dead? We're convinced
Something doesn't feel right in the Catholic Church right now, and people are starting to talk louder than ever. Cardinal Timothy Dolan, one of the most well-known voices in American Catholicism, has said some things recently that are making people nervous. He is 75 now, which means by church law, he's supposed to step down soon. But instead of quietly finishing his work, he's making comments that sound more like warnings. So, why now? Why is Dolan suddenly hinting at problems that have been whispered about for years? Let's start with the Pope. Pope Francis has looked tired and weak for a while. He's had surgery, knee trouble, and sometimes needs a wheelchair. Even though the Vatican says he's still doing fine, people have been quietly asking if he's going to retire. After all, Pope Benedict did it back in 2013, and Francis has said in the past that he would step down too if he felt he couldn't continue.
Good Sunday to everyone.
Buona domenica a tutti. Grazie tante.
The Holy Father also received the sacrament of reconciliation.
Now, with Dolan speaking up, people are wondering, does he know something we don't? Is a major change coming sooner than expected? There's also the question of what direction the church is heading. Under Francis, the tone has definitely changed. The church has become more open to conversations about things that used to be off limits, like divorce, same-sex couples, and even how women fit into church roles. A lot of Catholics have appreciated the softer, more understanding approach. But others, especially more traditional members, feel like the core of the church is being watered down. Dolan seems to be stuck in the middle. He says he supports the Pope's kindness and care, but you can hear the hesitation in his voice. He's clearly not comfortable with everything that's happening. What really caught people off guard is that Dolan also mentioned tension inside the Vatican. That's not something you usually hear out loud. There have been leaks and rumors for years, talk of power struggles, disagreements between conservative and progressive leaders, but Dolan is one of the first to basically say, yes, there's a lot of resistance, and it's serious. That's big. It tells us that behind the smiling faces and official statements, there might be real conflict happening inside the church leadership.
The first bishop of Rome. And so every pope has to conserve and pass on the integrity of the faith. And he did that. But the way you do it is different.
Now, let's talk about timing. Dolan is at the age where bishops are supposed to resign. Now, you'd think he'd stay quiet, reflect on his work, and step away peacefully. But instead, he's speaking out. Some people think he's trying to leave a mark, make sure people remember him as someone who stood up and said what others wouldn't. Others believe he's trying to guide the church through what could be a rough period. And then there are those who think something even bigger is happening. Is Dolan preparing the church for a new pope? Is he trying to shape who the next leader will be? There's also the broader situation to think about. Catholic churches are emptier than they used to be. A lot of younger people have stopped going altogether. The church's influences in many countries isn't what it once was. There are real questions about how much longer it can avoid making deeper changes. Maybe Dolan sees all this and feels like it's now or never to say something real, but why wait until the very end of his career? Why now, unless something major is about to happen? And while Dolan praises Pope Francis for his global work on poverty, immigration, and climate change, he also throws in comments that feel like subtle criticism. It's like he's saying, yes, the Pope has done good things, but maybe he's missed some key issues too. That kind of talk makes people wonder that Dolan isn't saying out loud. All of this feels like more than just a casual conversation. It's as if Dolan is trying to send a quiet alarm. Not everyone agrees on what's going on. Some say he's just being honest. Others think he's stirring the pot. But one thing is clear, there is tension in the church and Dolan's words are turning up the heat.
Cardinal Dolan on a Jubilee Year Rome tour planned before the sad news of the Pope's death, leading Mass in the historic church at the top of the Spanish Steps for New York Catholic pilgrims, many of whom would love for Dolan to make history himself.
Let's look at what's changed. Francis has focused on making the church more open and understanding. What else hasn't been said? What don't we know yet? And is the Catholic Church heading toward a new era or a new crisis? Do let us know about your views in the comment section below, and for more such amazing videos, do subscribe to our channel.